Here is Qiubai. Apparently the first character in her CN name is actually Cho, not Qiu, which is kinda weird. They just didn't directly translate that into her operator name, but I'm a silly YouTuber, not a game developer. I feel like Qiubai is one of the more slept on newer released 6 stars, but her kit is pretty awesome, and in this video I'll explain why. Let's get into it. Alright, swords are cool and all, but you should really learn some life skills, Qiubai. Life isn't all about swords, you know. When's the last time you cooked? Oh, yesterday? You cook almost every day? Damn, maybe I should start doing that. Qiubai is a Lord Guard. You know him, the Silver Ashes, the Thorns, the Laplands, yeah, we don't talk about you. These guys have well-rounded stats and can launch ranged attacks that deal 80% of their attack stat as damage, so most people forget this trait even exists. We're gonna start with Qiubai's second talent first because it makes more sense to do it this way. It gives her attacks a 20% chance to bind enemies for 1.5 seconds. 20% doesn't sound like a lot, and it isn't, but it's just common enough to be a pleasant surprise like the extra chicken nugget you occasionally get at McDonald's because the minimum wage workers aren't paid enough to properly count that 43 nugget meal you ordered. Qiubai's first talent makes her deal additional arts damage when attacking slowed or bound enemies. For clarification, the slow on this talent is not movement speed reduction like Manticore S1 or the blue-haired girl kisser. It's a sluggish slow, like Best Girl Angelina type slow, like Nerd Emoji slow. These two talents obviously synergize with each other, and Qiubai can actually pair with other ops pretty well, considering sluggish and bind aren't uncommon status effects. Though, like with every synergy, you shouldn't be forcing operators to kiss if they really don't want to. The extra damage is arts, which is mixed damage, not very pugger. Extra damage is always nice, and as mentioned earlier, this talent isn't that bad when she has help from other ops. It obviously synergizes with her first talent that gives a chance to bind enemies, so even if Qiubai is home alone with the Eldritch Beast knocking at her door, she can proc it by herself. If you're scared that the 1.5 second bind Qiubai inflicts herself won't last enough for her to get the additional arts damage in because you're a nerd and immediately know off the top of your head that Lord Guards have a 1.3 second attack interval and projectile time exists, don't worry, the extra arts damage will always come in if Qiubai binds the enemy on that same hit. Alright, swords are cool and all, but you should really think about your financial future more, Qiubai. Life isn't all about swords, you know. When's the last time you invested into the S&P 500? Oh, yesterday? You invest almost every day? Damn, maybe I should start doing that. Qiubai's first skill makes her next attack bind the enemy for 3 seconds. At the end of the bind, the enemy will be dealt 300% arts damage in an AoE with a tile radius of 1.7 tiles. It's a generic Power Strike Gamma Skill 1 with extra silliness tied to Qiubai's kit. Or is it? This skill seems bland on the surface, but there's some interesting quirks within it. First of all, the charge type is attack recovery, which sounds bad, but it's an instant attack for only 4 SP that comes with the 3 second bind, so she can charge the skill while the bind is still active, giving it very high uptime. On top of that, you can use Chen's talent that gives 1 SP to all offensive and defensive type charging skills every 3 seconds, assuming you have at least Chen mod tier 2, and this decreases the bind downtime significantly as Qiubai no longer has to do an extra attack in order to activate her skill. The damage is actually pretty good too. Qiubai's extra arts damage talent goes off since she gets autos in on that binded target, and it comes with an explosion with a decent AoE radius. The one weird downside of the skill is that if your target is bind immune, then Qiubai doesn't do any damage with this to them, but considering the only enemy I can name off the top of my head that's bind immune are the golems from CC4 with a certain tag set, this con basically doesn't exist. Because this skill is such an effective hands-off crowd control and damage option, it's used in many low step records. Qiubai's second skill changes her range to an Ifrit lane -1 tile. She'll immediately deal big arts damage to all the ground enemies in it. For the duration of the skill, it'll increase her attack and sluggish slow all the ground enemies in her range. Once the short duration is over, Qiubai will deal big physical damage to, again, all the ground enemies. The SP charging type is attack recovery again, but like her S1, it has a low SP cost, so charging it shouldn't be that much of an issue. The damage on this skill mainly comes from the two bursts, the arts damage one at the beginning and the physical one at the end. They hit everything except floating enemies in her range, so the skill can be used for the burst true AoE, but honestly, there's nothing too much about this skill that makes it epico. Even though the physical damage burst at the end scales off the base attack additive she gets during the skill, the arts damage one at the beginning doesn't for some reason. The 5-second duration makes it so that Qiubai only gets 3 attacks off, which is kind of disappointing, so the skill basically gets reduced to those bursts of damage. Since her extra arts damage talent scaled off of her current attack stat, the massive increase in attack she gets for the duration of the skill also boosts that damage, so that's nice, I guess. But remember, she only gets 3 autos in with it, so there's nothing too great there. Qiubai's third skill increases her attack, expands her attack range, makes her attacks deal arts damage, and lets her target 3 enemies. It doubles the damage from her first talent, and ranged attacks will no longer have the 80% damage penalty. Every attack Qiubai does will give her 13 attack speed, stacking up to 8 times. With the full 8 stacks, Qiubai's attack interval goes all the way down to slightly more than half a second, and since she attacks faster, she will proc her bind talent more often. Even though she has the speed to match the legendary foreskin shredder, Qiubai doesn't attack fast enough for her to permabind enemies in her range because remember, her bind chance by herself is 20%. It procs just enough for her to get a substantial amount of crowd control and extra arts damage from her second talent in, which is doubled from the skill by the way. Pressing the Qiubai button basically turns her into a cheese grater as she'll shred through any enemy that's in her range. The skill also gives her multi-target, which helps her get damage in on elites instead of becoming your next peon sweeper, though she works well as both. The multi-target actually gives her the ability to tear through enemy waves, elite or not. This skill has a decently long cooldown of 55 seconds, but its duration is half a minute, so it'll last long enough to clear big hordes of enemies. I usually don't do synergy segments in my videos because there's a lot of you who are a little too deep into the mechanics of Arknights and try forcing operators to kiss, fall in love when the solution can be a lot simpler. But I feel like Suzerain S3 and Qiubai S3 go really well together. And wait, before you put a Glock to my head, hear me out, okay? They have the same skill cycle length, which is 85 seconds. Qiubai has 30 seconds of uptime, Suzerain has 35 seconds of uptime. Qiubai has 55 seconds of downtime, Suzerain has 50 seconds of downtime. With Suzerain S3's AoE wide sluggish, Qiubai is guaranteed the extra arts damage from her second talent. Come on, that's pretty cool, isn't it? And to be extra clear, your usual buffers like Warframe and Ark don't work too well on Qiubai S3. Warframe S2 doesn't last long enough, and Ark S3's main benefit is the attack speed boost, but because Qiubai already gets a buttload of attack speed from her stacks, his DPS steroids will be diluted out, which is why I think Suzerain is the best fit for her if you happen to find yourself in a situation where Qiubai needs a more billion more damage. Go S3M3 or Qiubai. If you love her very much, or love not playing the game like me, you can also do S1M3. Anyways, that's about it. Goodbye. Alright, swords are cool and all, but you should really take care of yourself more, Qiubai. Life isn't all about swords, you know. When's the last time you took a shower? Oh, yesterday? You shower every day? Damn, maybe I should start doing that.